those of you that have been to a bond presentation, I do apologize. However, we don't want to miss the opportunity to get the information out there to folks who need it. So maybe there's one person that hasn't heard it, you will hear it again. And if you've heard it before, you would just deepen your understanding. Like when I used to teach English, kids would say, I already read of Mice and Men. Well, great, you're going to read it twice. And we'll know it even more deeply than you did the first time. And so that's what we have first. Then I have a compliance piece, which is a required wellness thing I have to go over. We're going to have a discussion and an update from the technology subcommittee that's been working. And then we're going to talk about Feedback February in terms of communication, community-based accountability.
Everyone gets a 31-page report.
Yay! It'll be fun. And then this is we have rotating membership. And so we want to recognize the folks who have served their time, and we'll be rotating off, and we will have replacements. And I hope you know who you are. If you don't, just gotta play along. Like, oh, okay, great, thanks. If you thought you were rotating off and you're not on the list, also hide your dismay. We'll talk. We appreciate everyone's service, but we do rotations for parents. There's a certain amount of years, and teachers and students. There's some, just to make sure we have a good chunk of people that are returning, as well as some new fresh blood. That's just how we do it. All right. And so, in February, the board voted to go up for an election for a bond. And so in the school business, during the school day with the school resources, we can be clear about the information related to the bond. It is also, there's state laws about us using school resources to advocate for or against any election. The bond is an election. And so I just want to be clear that we have this video that's already been vetted, and so it's all informational. It's about 10 minutes, so we'll watch it. And then at the end of that, if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer those. Otherwise, that's our informational portion of the meeting. Ready? Can you see if you can get rolling?
Generations of families continue to be drawn to high-quality schools and the community of Alamo Heights ISD. The district is committed to high standards of academic excellence, providing safe, well-maintained schools, and preparing students for future success through engaging learning opportunities. The Alamo Heights ISD Board of Trustees voted unanimously to place a $371 million bond proposal before voters on Election Day, May 6. Bond 2023 would provide updated learning spaces for today's students and their curricular and extracurricular program needs. This bond proposal prioritizes safety and security initiatives, optimizes the use of district land, and allows the district to be better community partners with additional parking, improved traffic flow, and meeting spaces and outdoor fields for the use of our community. The call for a bond election is a result of an inclusive and comprehensive process that began more than a year ago and included facility needs assessment as well as the opportunity to gather input from AHISD stakeholders. The process began with a review of the master plan for facilities designed in 2016 that led to the first phase of construction after the voter approval of Bond 2017. 3 propositions are included in the Bond 2023 proposal. Projects would affect all students and staff in Alamo Heights ISD. New state law requires school districts to separate certain bond items into multiple propositions for voter consideration. Proposition A, at a cost of $344 million, would fund renovations and upgrades at all AHISD campuses. The majority of Alamo Heights ISD schools were built around the 1950s, and the average age of our buildings is 71.8 years, which requires responsive renovations. Howard Early Childhood Center, that serves our youngest learners, our 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, would receive a new building designed specifically for early childhood learners. This new facility would also include new outdoor learning spaces and new playgrounds. The building would be placed on the east side of the property, away from Broadway, with an entrance off of Lorenz. This new placement would facilitate the opportunity to address security, parking and traffic flow, and provide additional play areas. This new construction would provide the least disruption to learning for our youngest students, as the current school building would be utilized until the construction of the new building is completed. At Cambridge Elementary, the proposal includes a refresh of all classroom lighting, ceilings, paint, and flooring, science labs, cafeteria, and outdoor dining additions, kitchen upgrades, professional development space for staff, a new mechanical system, and more efficient plumbing, HVAC, and electrical systems. At Woodridge Elementary, the proposal includes a refresh of all classrooms, science labs, and the cafeteria serving lines, upgrades to the cafeteria acoustics, more efficient plumbing, HVAC, and electrical systems, and a new first and second grade playground. At Alamo Heights Junior School, bond funds would be used to refresh classroom lighting, flooring, paint, and ceiling tiles, renovate the cafeteria, auditorium, and restrooms, improve plumbing, HVAC, and electrical systems, and add parking and security lighting. A new sixth grade building would be constructed, along with the new competition and auxiliary gyms, weight rooms, multipurpose rooms, and locker rooms, new play areas, and a new synthetic turf field and track, reoriented from the current field position. Bond 2017 construction brought new academic, athletic, fine arts, and cafeteria facilities to the back portion of the Alamo Heights High School. Bond 2023 extends that work to the front portion of the campus. The school will receive new academic and administrative buildings, with the opportunity to update classrooms to today's standards in size, as well as to provide flexible learning spaces to meet unique program needs. The proposal also includes renovations to the auditorium, as well as a refresh of classrooms in the music building and additional outdoor courtyard space. The Excel and 09 academies would move from Robbins campus to the current administration offices on Broadway, bringing them in closer proximity to the high school staff and program offerings. A new central office learning center would be constructed across from the high school. All administrative offices would be located in one space, along with a boardroom, meeting rooms, professional development space, and additional parking spaces. The Robbins campus would also gain additional parking with the removal of the current building. A new softball field will be constructed here that includes bleachers, locker room facilities, and meeting spaces. Additional renovations will include the resurfacing of tennis courts and team spaces. Bond 2023 continues district efforts to prioritize safety with updated security cameras, access control, and the Raptor visitor identification system used at campuses. The proposal also addresses AHISD's cybersecurity position, including strengthening network infrastructure and monitoring, wireless access, and endpoint security protection. Also included are security lighting upgrades at the junior school, Woodridge, Howard, and plant services, and security fencing around new buildings like Howard. Safety is also addressed with improved traffic flow and additional parking around all campuses. Other district projects addressed in Proposition A include playground upgrades, furniture replacements, band instruments, new school buses, an additional bus maintenance bay, land acquisition, and sustainability initiatives like solar panels and LED lighting that would lower operating costs. Proposition B, at a cost of $17.3 million, would fund a visitor bleacher athletic facility at Orem Stadium. The visitor side of the stadium was constructed in 1947 and was not touched in previous bonds. This proposition includes funding for multi-purpose meeting space, new locker rooms, restrooms, concessions, team space, golf team practice area, and student sports media program equipment. Proposition C, at a cost of $9.7 million, would fund technology including student and staff devices. This proposition wouldn't fund additional devices, but maintain current levels through life cycle replacements. So what does Bond 2023 mean for Alamo Heights ISD homeowners? Taxpayers see one school district tax rate on their property tax bill. However, that one tax rate is made up of two components: the district's maintenance and operations, M&O, tax rate, and the interest and sinking, INS, tax rate. Revenues generated from the M&O tax rate are used to pay the district's operating costs, including salaries, utility bills, and maintenance expenses. The majority of the school district's operating costs fund salaries for teachers and staff, In Alamo Heights ISD, that's 90% of the budget. Revenues generated from the INS tax rate can be used only to repay outstanding district bonds. Similar to taking out a mortgage or a home equity loan for large home construction projects, districts rely on bonds to cover the large amounts that construction requires. Bond funds can't be used for operating costs or salaries. For the 2022-23 school year, Alamo Heights ISD will send $36.7 million of local M&O tax revenues to the state general fund, referred to as recapture. That's 49 cents for every dollar of M&O tax revenue generated. INS tax revenues raised through the bond elections are not subject to recapture and would all remain with the district. Passage of all three bond propositions does not increase the overall tax rate. In fact, the overall tax rate is expected to decrease by 5 cents over the next 8 years. These estimates are based on current state law. Specifically, the bond proposition would result in an estimated 9-cent increase to the INS rate, and with an estimated decrease of 15 cents to the M&O rate due to compression, the overall tax rate will decrease. The estimated INS tax rate implication is estimated to be $8 per month for $100,000 valuation. Property taxes for senior citizens over the age of 65 and disabled persons are generally frozen as long as they've applied for and received an exemption from the appropriate appraisal district. Bond 2023 is part of a master plan to ensure that future generations of Alamo Heights ISD students learn in facilities that are up to current standards and include major upgrades and improvements district-wide, including safety and security. Election day is Saturday, May 6th, and early voting runs from April 24th through May 2nd. You can learn more about the Bond 2023 proposal by visiting our website at www.ahisd.net/bond2023.
Well, thank you. This video is on the website in case anybody's asking any questions. You can point them there, as well as lots of slides and other information. Are there any questions that you have that I might be able to answer from this presentation? We have it answered.
I have a question. I hope it's not dumb, but I've heard that all three have to pass.
Well, no.
A, B, and C, or
All three are separate propositions.
okay. But I guess I heard that there was some legislation that's coming into play that in the future that all three would have to pass together. No, maybe
Well, there's no telling what's cooking right now in Austin. Yeah, there are a number of things that people are talking about related to bond, as well as other types of stuff. But as of the law on May 6th, there are three separate propositions. Great question.
To add something, there are a lot of yard signs out right now that are pertaining to the citywide elections. We do not
City of San Antonio,
City of San Antonio, yes, City of San Antonio elections. And so and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe we have any yard signs for the Alamo Heights bond yet. Is that right? I mean, I see a lot of signs that say vote no for the propositions. Those are not our signs. Those are citywide, City of San Antonio wide signs.
Yeah, that's Prop A San Antonio.
It's also Prop A, yeah. That's
Yeah,
but
so,
ours are Prop.
That's a good point.
yeah. So
ours are
any
Prop
sign
A.
that you, the signs that I've seen, either for or against Prop A for the City of San Antonio,
Correct.
very clearly say Prop A. They don't say anything else about Alamo Heights or AH.
Right.
That's correct.
But there's been a lot of confusion.
Yeah,
Hearing from
absolutely.
people like, that's
Yeah.
confusing, why are y'all, those
Yeah.
are not our signs.
Is there a plan to differentiate between the two when you're promoting the Alamo Heights? Because I do think that's confusing. A lot of people don't understand
Yeah, so I'll
that.
say what I think I can say, and Carrie, or another parent who knows can speak up. There is a parent group that Brooke Mebane is heading up that's advocating in favor of the election, right? She can do that because she's not part of the school, and I am. And so I know that they have signage, they have logos set up that says AH. Their logos I've seen them. I don't know what their plans are for their signage.
Okay.
But,
I've talked to her.
Anybody in
about
that group? Yeah.
trying
Well,
differentiate.
my understanding is that there will be yard signs.
Okay.
Yes, and if I'm able to, I could share with this group. I mean, there's an Instagram
Sure.
set up as well as there is a Google
Yeah.
form if you would like to request a yard sign
Mhm.
that's in favor of
Yeah, sure.
this bond.
And how do
I'm happy
they
to do that?
do that or whatever? Just what's the Instagram that they're looking for? Cool.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, just look it up. Yeah.
I don't remember it off the top of my
It's
head,
like
but I
yes
can.
for A.
Yeah, it's yes.
Yes, that's what it was.
Something kids.
AH
Kids.
Kids
kids.
or something. Oh, I shouldn't.
Let me.
It's hard to figure out.
They're doing fine. Yeah. Good. Any other questions while they're looking that up?
Yeah, it's yes
Those
for
are great.
AH kids.
Yes, for age kids. Good.
Yes.
Well, there you go. And so there's a whole parent group that's working in that regard. Yeah. Any other questions for me as a school official?
Looks like this. Anybody?
Great. Well, thank you all so much. What I can do as a school official is just remind everybody, early voting starts on April the 24th. That's a week from next Monday, right? Almost a couple weeks from now. And then election day is the 6th. And this will be a site for election as well as Lions Field. And that's the close one as well.
And City Hall.
And City Hall, yeah. So encourage folks to vote because we do that every time for every election. All right, thank you very much. What's next? Oops.
Generations of families.
Sorry. All right. With the reminder email last week, I guess, or the week before, I included a link to a Google Doc. It's a kind of a longer document. And let me explain that a bit. There's a rule, there's a state law that says that in our function as a school health advisory council, among other things that we do as a group, that the district sets goals for nutrition promotion, nutrition education, coordinated health, and other school-based activities to promote health for students and staff. This came about, I remember when it happened, so it was a new law, and I was like, great, something else that we have to do. And so we did it. As you know, from your experience in the district, we do a great job starting from the elementary school all the way up to the high school to promote good nutrition, good health. I mean, I don't know, your kids are probably always taught, if you're an elementary parent, your kids have probably talked about cooking cauliflower or squash or some kind of other uncommon vegetables as they learn in their PE classes in elementary. Well, that didn't stop. We have a 6th grade class that teaches health. For every 6th grader takes it for 9 weeks. That's unique to us, and that's been going on for 20 plus years. And then our high school health class, as well as our PE classes, continue with the lifelong fitness for students. I don't know if any other districts do this, but we were early on, it's been about 15 years, we started offering yoga as a PE class for high school. We do CrossFit as an option for students, as well as GenFit. The idea was to keep kids active in exercising in the not the traditional PE way at the high school. So we do lots of things like that, not to mention our great child nutrition youth. Well, this is what they do. This is from our child nutrition folks. At any rate, that's a lot. But we formally have to have goals, and so we set goals years ago, and what we essentially do is we keep working those. And so every year we just kind of keep at it. And I do have to annually report it to the trustees, but I have to first kind of give you guys a first glimpse at it. So what you saw in that Google Doc was the more detailed thing. What I'm just going to do is an overview of, I said all that stuff, or technically. So I'm the guy at the district level that works with the principals. The principals are in charge of making sure that they do the things on their campus levels, and I just check in with them. And so that document you saw, they all reviewed it and updated prior to the presentation that I'll be giving to the trustees in May, which I think is just going to be consent. Let's hope, right? Yada yada, Sean Sheets. And so essentially, as you saw, the goal areas are about the eating environment, right? So it's both making sure that everybody understands what we're serving. You know, the federal government has rules and the state government has rules for what we serve students. And so in Howard, Cambridge, Woodridge, and the junior school, they're pretty strict about what we have to do. At the high school, we're off of that program because we're able to charge for a whole variety of reasons, which I can get into if you have questions about that. But the rules we have to follow are a little bit looser, and so we're able to offer more fare for kids, and it's actually fun to eat there because we can do that. Likewise with PE, we have PE goals about making sure that we're coordinating nutrition with PE, about eating habits, as well as maintaining good physical activity as our students grow older. That's actually what I just said. And the objective number 1 about alternative physical activity for older students, that's what I was talking about. All those various things we do for students, extra over and above. This one we talked about as an ongoing thing, and as you saw in the bond, we have some money set aside to refurbish the cafeterias at the elementary school. If that's the place where students are going to slow down and make sure they're eating food correctly and eating good food, it's got to be an environment. We've been conscious of that since we first set this. And so this is an ongoing thing because it's just such a loud place. And so having proper supervision and that kind of stuff, trained people at the elementaries and the junior school is really important. That's an ongoing thing, so I know we're never there. I will say that knowing the junior school in particular, we've got grand designs about fixing that from the bond. So that's something we're looking at. And then lastly, encouraging health and wellness of our employees. Even prior to the pandemic, when it was super stressful for everybody, we really made a big deal of making sure that our employees knew that they had access to employee assistance programs, which it's called Dear Oaks. Everybody gets 6 free counseling sessions. We also you get some low-level legal advice as well. And we also have Care Solace, which we've had for 3 years. This is our 3rd year now, in which any employee or family member or student can have access to a healthcare or a mental health care concierge, which is, hey, I want to see a counselor. Can you help get me in there, right? Because we all know one of the most frustrating things about medical or mental health is waiting on and getting an appointment. Well, a healthcare concierge will do all of that for you. It really only takes a 15-minute phone call. They do all the work and they call you back and they set you up. It's really a good service. And so that's it. So that's the bulk of what we have. All the specifics were in that one thing. Are there any questions about these areas for me? Thanks. And thanks for continuing to help our students and staff to be healthy, both in terms of nutrition as well as physical activity and mental health as well. Right? What's next? All right, Brian. I think you guys have handouts. I'm going to hand it over to you.
All right.
And you let me know what you need from me.
I don't think I need anything from you right now. So this is a follow-up from, was it last meeting? I think I introduced you guys to what we were doing in our technology subcommittee. If you remember, we were charged by the board and Dr. Bashara to develop a set of technology beliefs for the district that kind of focused on guidelines and screen time and just how we're using technology in our classrooms. So our committee met nearly every month this year. We wrapped up just a couple of weeks ago with our work for the year. Lauren was on the committee, Jimmy, Libby, Heather, who am I missing? Carrie, thank you. Holly Ballou and Christine Sawtelle, thank you. So we wrapped up our work about 2 weeks ago for the year. What came about through a lot of just great conversations, and you guys are free to jump in whenever you want, were we organized those discussions into essentially 4 different topics or buckets. So our conversations really seem to revolve around guidelines for the district, support for the district, communication with parents, and evaluation. Each of those buckets then, we wrote a series of goals for those buckets and a series of recommendations for action for the district for those goals. Where we're at in the process right now is bringing it to this committee for feedback. I'm going to be bringing this to campuses for feedback. I have two already scheduled, and parents for feedback as well. And we're going to collect that feedback from you all, and then we'll revisit this essentially one last time to incorporate more brain power from everyone. So what I want to do today is just kind of a little feedback protocol with y'all. I'm going to hand these out. We'll give you guys, 5 minutes maybe with a shoulder partner just to look through it. And I want to collect these back from you. On here, it has our goals and our recommendations for action, and then down at the bottom, just any clarifying questions you might have, any affirmations you might have, any considerations you may have, anything you think you may want to add from this or question about this, please do so. And then we'll kind of report back as a whole group after that. Does that make sense? Okay, so since we got 4, I'm just going to go in order here. Let's just do 2. And if you guys would start with communication, okay? And then the second one in here was guidelines, I think. So if you'll start with guidelines and then support and then evaluation. Communication, guidelines, support, and once you jump in, these 3, and evaluation, okay? All right, so let me hand this out real quick. So why don't we go through just kind of section by section. Let's start with communication. So any feedback, any clarifying questions, affirmations, suggestions? Yep.
So one of our clarifying questions was, our back to school night as a teacher is super fast, so we get to see parents for maybe like 5 minutes. So if we're adding to talk about like technology and tools and how to use that, is back to school night going to be longer? Can it be a handout that, like what does that kind of look like? Just because it already kind of feels
I
rushed.
kind of
as a
saw it as
teacher.
almost something completely separate from
Okay, that's what
the
they
back to
asked.
school night.
So-
But right now, we're just gonna connect the considerations to are you gonna try to answer them right now too?
Well, if I can, quickly, yeah.
So on the separate event, my concern would be I have kids at 3 campuses, and so then do I go to 3? That would be like 6 back to school
That's
nights
good.
then?
Okay, did you write that down? Just kind of,
No.
because you gotta remember, right now it's just kind of a big idea.
I'll write
So
it
those would
down.
be great details for us for taking into consideration.
Yeah.
Or maybe there's one technology back to school night
For everyone.
or like a Zoom or something where you can be walked
That's
through.
what we
Yeah,
talked
that's
about, like
what
a
I
Zoom
think.
or an
Zoom,
email
and
that
you
goes
can
out.
actually be,
You can record it and people can watch it later too.
yeah, yeah.
But we on the positive really liked the how-to document that would get handed out. That seems better.
Yeah.
Than having it on
And
the
Yes.
that kind of seemed like more like a living, breathing thing, maybe a space on the website where
Yeah,
it's added,
yeah. I think that would be very
Yeah.
helpful.
Yep.
There's for sure some affirmation as far as like the merging of the calendar, the sharing, notification of grades, things like that is wonderful. I wonder if there's a consideration to also teach and have an opportunity to tell students that it's okay, there's a time to turn it off. And so just having clear boundaries that technology is massively important, but then there's absolutely a time to shut it off.
Great.
On the standardizing classroom calendar expectations, is that, I guess just to clarify that, is it like across a grade, across a subject, across a school? Like how does it get standardized? Because I can imagine it would look really different depending on how old you are.
Want to answer it?
No,
Oh,
I'm
okay.
agreeing with that.
Yes,
Including my cookies.
it would absolutely be, what a high school standardization looks like would be much different than what a, pre-K early child standardization would look like. I think the conversation, and anyone jump in, really kind of revolved around, when I get online to my students' Google Classroom, as a parent, I want to be able to see, not necessarily a lesson plan, but maybe, what the lesson highlights for the week are, what some important dates coming up are. So maybe it's some sort of template or something like that. That would need to be worked out, with teachers and what makes the most sense for classrooms and parents.
So a couple of questions. One, I was interested in how active is the community in providing feedback to the district and what forms and fashion, right? And then how do you measure that? So in other words, you're putting out a lot of information, but how do you know that the community is responding and responding in specific ways?
You want to use that real quick?
Well, I think, are you talking about specifically putting out information, like if we put out a 5-minute video on how to use Google Classroom, how are we measuring that that was an effective communication tool? Yeah, it's a good consideration.
Right, and then the other thing too is that like, how do we know that the community has access to certain technology? So we may want to put it on Zoom, but how many folks have access to Zoom? Or, you know, again, these are just things that I'm thinking about. How do you measure that feedback? That whatever you put out there that is being received.
Okay. Let's move on to guidelines.
I had one, just
Okay,
one
sure.
consideration for communications.
Good.
Just making sure that like all languages are inclusive.
Okay.
English, great,
Yep.
Spanish, other languages other than Spanish as well. That's it.
All right, guidelines. Affirmations, considerations.
One thing that we discussed that I brought up is just, I liked the first bullet for recommended for action is having some sort of like guideline for how much technology is being used per grade, maybe per subject. I think, you know, as a parent, we're all trying to have less technology for our kids, and especially these kids that kind of grew through the COVID period where they were on devices a lot. And so I think I would really love to see that. I think that would be well received by parents, just seeing like, even he was saying like the homework guideline, like just some sort of like, or even, you know, in Spanish immersion, you see how many minutes it increases, the instruction increases by grade as they get older. I think something in that realm, if you guys could come up with something like that. Maybe
Yeah, an affirmation that you're thinking along those lines. The consideration was making the language aligned with how we talk about homework. And similarly, that way people are like using the same language.
A consideration I thought of is just perhaps giving the teachers some guidelines around limiting the use of iPads in elementary school level as a reward. So sometimes I hear from my 5th grader, oh, well, I finished that assignment, so I had 20 extra minutes of iPad time, you know?
It's great.
I've seen that a lot being in the classroom with my 4th and 2nd graders and on down. Like there are lots of downtime. Like exactly, I finished this. Well, you have 30 minutes in there watching baseball highlights, or they all, by the end of it, all these kids have headphones on. No one's talking, and it's practicing math, but it's not. There's no instruction. They're clicking through these Prodigy, whatever it might be. And other kids I've watched it a lot. Come to my kids or whatever kids, like they don't know how to do these things. And the other kids will just press it for them, so they're leveling up. They're passing these things that are supposed to be, you know, tiered, and there's no learning. And you might look on the curriculum and say, "Oh, well, they did math for 20 minutes," but it's not really what I think the parents would consider learning math. And it almost becomes like a babysitter. Everybody's quiet, and it's just. But there's not a whole lot of instruction. Where if you look at it, it seems like they're learning. You know, if you looked at like, "Oh, this is what they did today for this X amount of time," and it's not, I think, what the intent of that's supposed to be. I think it's very easy to have that happen, and it's. I mean, you know, I think we need. I think that's on here too. The over reliance on technology.
Yeah.
I think we need to be careful. Another question I have: Who decides that? I guess that's where we are. But is that ultimately going to the school board? Who decides the recommendations? Is it? Like
Well, the
these
recommendations will
committees, or-
ultimately come out of the subcommittee, right? And then it will go to school board eventually. I don't know if it's necessarily for approval at that point, or if it's just.
Yes, the
it's
way
kind
I
of
would
a report
articulate
out.
it, sorry to keep talking while I'm eating. But I will keep eating the rest of the meeting. Technically, these are administrative guidelines. We certainly brief and keep the board along the way updated, and the board sees any issues with it, they let us know. But it's not like a board policy where the board will say, we approve this. But as we're developing it, we know they're in favor of it, because we're asking them all along the way, if that makes sense.
And I sit
But-
on the subcommittee as well, so I can kind of report back to people who I know we're wondering how we're doing in this subcommittee. And so I think it's real transparent. The conversation's pretty.
Like, it was really important for the board that parents were on this committee.
Very.
And so, so it's like, well, they didn't vote on it, but we knew that was important, so it happened, you know, that kind of stuff. That's how we go.
And I love the recommendation that, you know, just consider maybe making some kind of campus expectation that pre-K through 2nd grade, not on a device alone. But is that realistic? You know, I don't know how I think if I were a kindergarten teacher, I'd say, oh my gosh, I can't facilitate, make sure that they're in groups or whatever. But I think it just goes back to making sure that there's absolutely no app or content that's not age appropriate. You know, I think that's maybe more important than making sure that they're not by themselves with a device.
I think I heard you guys talking about that too.
Yeah, we brought up the carts instead of the one-to-one devices, you know, at the pre-K to second grade level, and I was saying that 13 years ago I was a teacher at Woodridge, and we did have carts. We didn't have iPads then, but we had carts that sat like in the hall, and then on my day or my half day, I would take the cart in, and like I would have a lesson for the laptops, and the kids were typing, and now it just seems like so heavy on the iPad. And you know, I don't even own an iPad, I was saying, as an adult, but I do my work on a laptop, and I think they need some of that experience typing and navigating instead of just, they know how to swipe on iPads.
I've seen them struggle on keyboards too because they don't
Yeah,
ever
they don't
have to
know.
do it. But they're, like I said, they're quick on that.
Yeah, and like we don't have iPads for the kids we don't have laptops for the kids at home, but like that would be such a great learning tool at school to start learning that. So those little carts, maybe we go back to the old days, the carts.
So there's, I hope this is okay to mention. So there was some conversation about, I know as a child, I learned typing. Like I had typing classes, I went into my teacher and we would sit and we would learn typing. And to this day, I'm able to type without looking down at my hands. And my kids are always like, how in the world are you doing that? And I feel like that is maybe a miss that we're kind of missing out on by using iPads, because kids can easily, they can type faster with one finger. But in the real world, that's not going to get them as far as actually typing on a laptop or a Chromebook. And so one of the conversations we had is, do we replace our iPads? Yeah, it's here. Replace our iPads with Chromebooks. And I would love to see it. I mean, how do y'all feel about that? Is there, anybody around the table that thinks that's a good idea or bad idea? I mean, I would love insight.
Very bad.
For early
the littles.
Yeah.
Because the problem is, I don't use my iPads very.
She's pre-K.
I'm pre-K, so I have two, and it's part of our rotation that centers.
Two iPads?
Two iPads, okay.
Yes, and they don't use it. We have a BenQ in our classroom that the kids can draw on, and they use that sometimes. But a lot of
It's
times,
like interactive whiteboard.
yeah, I'm sorry. And so, but a lot of times they'll take that because they want to take a picture or something. Like,
Right.
You know, and we take it outside to find the bugs that we're looking for and stuff like that. So, and I know that kindergarten does a lot more with the iPads when they're taking pictures. I mean, you see them going through the campus with, they're taking pictures of different things like that. A Chromebook.
But maybe not the kindergarten level, but even, I don't know. I love the feedback. I mean, I'm not in the classroom. That's not my gift by any means. But it's helpful to hear.
I have a 6th grader, so as a kinder teacher and a mother of a 6th grader who's just now in technology class, he's really excited about learning to type and not getting to see, but I would like to see it introduced at maybe like the 4th grade or 4th grade or just a little bit sooner, just like we should still be teaching cursive. I mean, there's a lot of brain and connection with all of that reading and the flow. So, but I would see that I still value typing. I remember taking typing too. So, and I still, as a parent, looking at my freshman, going, oh my gosh, this is so painful watching him try to get this done because he's like hunting and pecking. And so, I mean, as a parent, I made him download an app and practice, but I'm a dorky teacher parent. So, but yeah, I would think as a recommendation for the board, I think it would be great to have typing as something that the kiddos start to be introduced in more 4th or 5th grade before they get to junior school where they're expected to type up a paper. And so, and probably that would support you all a lot in the, later grades. Maybe it's a part of library, maybe it's a part of something else.
And even for years at the middle school, that was part of the 6th grade curriculum. They did a wheel where there was a technology class where those skills were taught. I guess somewhere along the line.
Well, Sean's getting it.
No, it's
in
there.
6th grade.
So in
He's
6th
getting
grade,
it right
yeah.
now.
So last year we implemented
Yeah.
typing.com again, and
Yeah.
so
But
it's their
I
first.
think it had gone away for a little while.
Yeah, so it's their first, when they enter, that's like their warm up. They have to complete a certain task in typing and meet a certain criteria of either words per minute or different like levels, and then so they do typing, but
Yeah,
you
it's
got to
good.
think that technology is only a 9-week course, so they're only doing
Right.
it for 9 weeks, and then
Mm-hmm.
you know, so at the junior school.
All right, you got it. Oh, go ahead.
I just was gonna say, I mean, it's my understanding, this, moving the Chromebooks down to 3rd grade, that was a change that did come out of this technology committee, that consideration.
That consideration, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the idea is to try to get further down, address typing at the lower levels.
And I think the iPads are very much associated, at least for the younger guys, games. It's games. I mean, they get the iPad out, like you said, a reward or whatever, and I think it's a little bit of a challenge that they're, you know, how they view that, and then how they test them on that sometimes too. I think it can kind of play over that it's not a serious thing.
Anything else on guidelines? How about support? We have about 5 minutes.
My consideration was that the district digital citizenship or the lessons incorporate the campus core values.
Okay.
Say that again?
That the citizenship lessons, that the digital ones incorporate the campus core values.
Oh, yeah.
You knocked that one out of the park, too. All right, evaluation?
My question about this would be, what does that technology use reflection tracking tool look like? And is that something that a parent would be able to see also? I mean, what were y'all thinking on the tracking tool?
Well, we didn't think of the tool itself at this point, but some way to help teachers really kind of, and maybe tracking's maybe the wrong word, maybe a reflection tool is a better example. So how teachers are using technology in the classroom with their students, you know, what students are doing with it. Is it just kind of, you know, drill and kill practice that they're doing? Are they creating and collaborating with one another? More of a reflection on what students are doing on their devices.
Can I add a clarifying question? So I think it sounds like what you're picturing is, or what I'm adding to what you just said, which is if we have on the other pages a clear sense of what our expectations are in the classroom, we train the teachers on those, whether that's minutes per grade or whether that's how you use Chromebooks or whatever that is. Everybody gets trained relative to their grade level. And teachers are trained, and those are all our expectations. The question would be now, just like with every training for teachers, is like, are you implementing it? What have you learned? What do you need now? Is that kind of where this rubric reflection thing was part?
It could
It's
be.
not a
Yeah,
standalone
yeah.
thing. It's in connection to all the other stuff.
Right.
And I think it could be to what you were saying about teachers kind of capturing the moments of like, as free time I do keep saying you can hop on your iPad. You know, so what was your planned intent use for the day? And then, whoa, how many minutes did kids actually end up on it with free time? And how could we really fill that instructionally in a more powerful way that is collaborative or taking things to a different level? Right? Great.
A lot of times, like, y'all can do this, or you can read your books, but who grabs the book? I mean,
Right.
none of them go to the books. So I was like, did you ever look at those? He's like, no, we're looking at baseball or whatever.
Prodigy.
And so, yeah, Prodigy. And so,
Yep.
that's a great, what you said is right. So,
Yeah.
I think.
I know I can set limits on my student or my children's phones, so it would be kind of cool, like in the classroom, if you could set a limit on the iPad usage. So like in a kinder classroom, say, you know, it's 30 minutes a day. That's max. I know for my kiddos get 15 minutes of e-reader if that's a choice. That's a choice. They don't have to choose e-reader, but if they wanted to choose it, they get max of 15 minutes of e-reader, and then it shuts off for them. So I know you can create those limitations as a parent, so I would assume we could just create those limitations.
Mine, you may know at Cambridge, they have something, all the boys were counting down 20 minutes that they had to do math. I mean, they're like, oh, you got 5 more minutes. And that, I mean, literally, so there's a timer, and then so they just kind of sit there while that goes out, and then they can play what they want. And I don't, so I guess there are some timers. We need to be careful. I think that's where the teacher comes in of like, well, what are they actually doing?
Yeah.
You know, before they're cleared. I guess does it automatically send them now? They can do the internet or whatever.
No,
'Cause-
they're literally watching the timer on the program. It's just iStation.
Okay, so it's just, so they're just watching the time. So they're doing their 20 minutes.
Yeah, they're
Okay.
watching it run.
And then they go, yeah.
Libby, do you want to wrap it up?
One thing, a question I had, I know we talked as a committee a lot about work samples and how parents can access work samples more if it's through Google Classroom, or you were talking about if a lot of work is being done on the iPad for the younger grades, how can parents see?
Yeah,
how
we got that
students-
under the communication piece. Student work should be shareable. So that's that idea of, when I was a kid and I wrote an essay, Sister Mary Ellen would grade it and it would go in my backpack and Mom would read it, but with so much digital stuff, sometimes that digital stuff doesn't make it home. Parents may see a grade, but may not see the actual work itself. So that's kind of where that's caught. So, yep. All right, so if you'll hand these back in between that and the recording, we got some good feedback from you. Like I said, I'm going to go out to campuses, get some more feedback from teachers and from parents, and eventually our committee will get back together and take this stuff into account. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Let's give Brian a round of applause. And thank you all for the great discussion and feedback. Moving right along.
Right.
I'm turning it over to
Yeah.
J-Dub.
All right, if you'll pull that up for me. All right, so if she's getting that keyed up, here's what I want you to do. You are gonna need an elbow partner again, or another group, so if you found a nice group, stay where you are. But what I want you to talk about is think back to last time we met and you guys read all those questions and you gave me feedback, or when you actually took the survey. A question that you're like, I wonder how people answered this. Okay, so just turn and talk about something. Now that we're closing this loop, what are you curious to see? So you've got about 20 seconds to turn and talk, something you're curious to see.
Well, I think we were suspending all the I was really curious to see how the kids
All right, you have until Brian gets the papers passed out.
Did you get
I did. All right, so I'm gonna pull us back together. Do me a favor and just keep the packets closed for 1 second. So I'm gonna give you some big picture information, then we'll turn and talk. What's something you're curious to see? Anyone have something you're curious to see? You're curious. Yeah.
I want to know how many parents got you forgot to fill this out email from Jimmy Walker. Because I got one really.
No, we wouldn't do that. Thank you. All right. Anyone else curious about something?
I would like to know what did their participation go up?
All right, participation. So I'm going to talk through just a little bit about the overall survey process, survey construction, how results have changed over time, and then I'm going to walk you through, and you have, I think, just about every single question that we did, which is why this is so long. We're not going to get through all of this today. So here's the overall process. In Alamo Heights, we value and pride ourselves on being all about profile of a learner and being student-centered. And we ensure that we're doing that by measuring ourselves every year through our community-based accountability system and our pillars. And every 5 years we go out to our community and say, what's top of mind? What are some things we need to focus on for the next 5 years? And those may change. And we create concrete, actionable goals from our pillars and our strategic lens that go into our district improvement plan and our campus improvement plan. And Feedback February is a big part of this. In the fall, we ask students to give feedback on the campus as a whole. In February, students give feedback to their individual teachers. So if they're in high school, they take 7 surveys, 8 surveys, and give all of their teachers feedback. Teachers get that. And we also do our teacher survey and our community survey in February. So the survey's put together, if you kind of compare it to committee work, we have standing committees and you have ad hoc committees. So there are standing questions that we ask every single year. School security, school climate, rigorous expectations, we ask every single year. Then there's other things that are used for a limited amount of time and they're about a specific issue. This year, like we did have questions about COVID response, they weren't on the survey this year. This year, there were quite a few questions about communication and technology. I'm right in your way. Let me move over here. So those are, I mean, maybe ad hoc's not the right word, but you kind of get where I'm going. Like they're here for a while till we need them, and then they may drop off the survey. When we do surveys for those standing topics like safety, there's several questions, not just one, because it's more reliable. If there was just one parent question about safety and you didn't understand the question, it's likely to give us invalid results. That's why there's multiple items rather than a single question. It makes the survey a little bit longer, but it makes the results more valid. We also word the questions to be conversational. So for instance, if I ask, hey, overall, how much respect do you think kids have for teachers? You would not say 4, right? You would say, I think a fair amount of respect. So we try to word the responses to be more natural because again, we're more likely to get valid answers that way. What a 4 means to me is going to be very different from what it means to Carrie. So that's why the questions are worded that way. Also, all of the questions have 5 responses in a Likert type scale. Very positive, pretty positive, a more neutral in the middle, and the negative and a more defined negative. And only the questions that are those standing are questions that have to be answered. A lot of questions, if it didn't pertain to you or you don't know how to answer, you just skip it. Because I don't want incorrect information, I would rather people just skip it. Also, thanks to your feedback, this is what it looks like if you take it on your phone. So from part of your feedback last time, was to get a little, oh, you're 50% finished, keep going, almost done. So I added that to the survey from your feedback. So this is, to your point about survey distribution, I personalize the email so it goes and it says, tell us about Piper's experience. And ask parents to fill out 1 per student because your experience with a high schooler, you may answer differently than your experience with elementary. And it's also to promote parents to respond if it has your child's name. I know that 84% of the emails get answered the first day. If it's not answered the first day, it's not going to be read. It just gets buried in an email box. I know that I can ping people, but after I've pinged you 4 times, if you haven't answered by then, you're not going to answer. So here's how I did it this year. The first initial invitation I sent out mid-morning. The tone was, help us improve our schools. Ping number 1, early morning for early morning risers who are goal-oriented. I made the tone of the email goal-oriented, help us get to 2,000. Lunchtime when you're sitting with peers. The tone was, look how many of your peers have already done this. And then the last ping, my Hail Mary email was trying to be funny, and it was things you can do in 10 minutes. You could fold the laundry or fill out the survey. So if you made it to my attempt to be humorous, you made it to the 3rd ping. Response rates, y'all, our best response rate ever. We had, my glasses on, 5,678 total responses. The first year we did the parent survey, we had 760 responses. This year, 2,460. So really, each year, more and more people are responding, and I'm so grateful for that because our results are more valid. Great student response, great teacher response, and you can see how that breaks down by teachers, assistants, counselors, administrators, and others like an occupational therapist. All right. Over time, you know, I said it had 5 responses. If someone chose one of the top 2, we call it favorable. I never pick the top one. It's just part of my personality, right? I'm always gonna be, it's pretty good. So that's why we put it together in percent favorable. This is 3 to 5. Remember I said we've done this every year. I'm gonna come up here. And the top scoring things with elementary age students are expectations and relationships. Notice this right here. Do you remember talking about this last year? That was sense of belonging. Took a big drop after COVID. This year, everything went up. This is 6 to 12. Top scoring here, expectations again, but now safety. Again, belonging took a dip, everything went up again this year. This one is staff. Of note, do you see that green? We didn't start asking staff, how satisfied are you with your job in Alamo Heights until 2 years ago, and that's the trend, which is the exact trend we really want to see. This blue is not belonging, this was professional learning, because during COVID, we just didn't do a lot of it. But again, with staff, again, this year trend, everything saw a nice bump up. I love this, and I'm gonna tell you why. At the top, this is, if a friend or colleague was looking for a school district, how likely are you to recommend Alamo Heights? That has consistently been really high. And what I love about this is it says, I love this place. I love these people, and I sure wish you would work on a few things. Like you can have both. I have both. We all have both. And that to me is illustrated in this. This blue, again, it's belonging. The one thing here that took a dip, this gray, parent perception of school safety. Is that surprising to anyone that every parent in this district is thinking about school safety a little bit more right now? Right? It makes sense. So overall, rigorous expectation was a strength in both elementary and secondary. Sense of belonging is improving, but it was still a lower scoring item. Safety is an area of focus for parents, and school climate showed positive trend across all stakeholders. So, as you go to look at results in just a minute, here's what I'm going to ask you for. I call this the sniff test. That's very scientific. It just means if you break it down and think of out of 10 people, if 70% chose those top two, one of those top two was a favorable response, we're on track. We're not there, but we're on track. 7 out of 10 people favorably responded. If 40% chose the top answer, we have some really strong promoters out there in the community about this. And we may be able to use that to help us address some areas where we need to work. If we have 10% or more, 1 out of every 10 people chose a negative response, that's a wondering. Why? So it would look like this. An asset is, this was students to teachers. My teacher is motivating and inspiring. 54% of kids strongly agree. That's an asset. More than half the kids strongly agree that their teacher is motivating. A wondering, students, how connected do you feel to adults? 14%, 21% of our students here were saying slightly connected or not at all connected. That's a wondering. Why? And what are we going to do? And an on track, parents, how do you feel your child's school is preparing them for next academic level? This is 78%, extremely well, quite well. Doesn't mean we're there, doesn't mean we're done, but it means we're on track. So in our remaining 8 minutes, you're going to choose a page or two. And here's how it's broken down. If you want to look at pillar 1, student growth, it's pages 1 to 3. If you want to look at readiness, which is really college, career, military readiness for post-secondary, after high school, 4, safety, well-being starts on 5, engagement, participation in programs, 15, parent and community engagement is 23, and quality staff and professional learning starts on 26. So you pick one of those that is of most interest to you and look for where are we on track? Are there any assets we can leverage? And are there any things that really with our stakeholders, we've got some wonderings around? Together and just get some of your, knowing that I don't think anyone got to page 30 from 1 to 30, but is there anything that stood out to you as an on track, an asset, or a wondering from the few questions that you were able to look at in this brief amount of time? Yeah.
So on the, how much do you feel like you belong at your school? That was kind of interesting. Thinking about that.
Yeah, so this is, remember when we looked earlier at the strategic lens? This has been an area of focus that we've continued to work on. And there are differences between elementary and secondary. I think one of the things we've also found is that in secondary it's tightly correlated with participation. I think time is a factor there because like if you're on the bus for 16 hours going to Florida, you're feeling pretty connected to the kids in the band with you. So I think we do know that that's a correlation, but that number is nowhere near where we would want it to be at all. What else?
Mine would kind of go alongside of that. I noticed on page 5 and 6, the two that stood out to me were the somewhat safe as far as overall how safe do you feel. And I don't know if it correlates with the one before that asking about how effective are the emergency drills. Was this safe as far as that is concerned or safe as belonging? I did notice today the SRO was at the junior school today at drop off, and so I know those are new components, the new emergency system, things like that. So I don't know if those are two correlations, but
yeah, that's
I think that
interesting.
those are numbers.
I could see how those would definitely be correlated, be related.
And maybe just one more.
Absolutely, Bobby.
So page 26, somewhat valuable as far as the teachers feeling their training is concerned. I know that's a big piece, so I think we talked about this too. The relevancy of the training matters, and so just making sure that we're getting the teachers what they need and want.
Yes.
And it makes me wonder about like kinder through third this year, all their PD was solely focused on reading academies.
Which is a compliance thing we were required to do.
And so for them, it maybe there were other things they would rather be
I don't want
learning
to do
about,
this.
but they were required to do that. So
Which still matters.
Which
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
absolutely science reading matters.
very
yes.
important. But I can
Yes.
see some people maybe not valuing it to the degree that they might have.
Anyone have an asset that stood out when you're like, wow, I'm pleasantly surprised by this?
I was struck by how many assets there were. Just, that was over 7%.
So here's, just to take us to closure here, the last page, what I love about the way we do gathering feedback is there is this quantitative part, there are surveys, but surveys without lived experience are just numbers. So on your last page, after reading thousands of comments, because there's 2 open-ended for every survey response, and there were a lot of survey responses. These are the top 8 things that people say they value about our district on yours. These are random comments up here. And on the back, just of note, for some reason it says top 8 considerations, and there's only 7 there. The last one was students should have more opportunities, and it just got cut off the page. So I love that we have both. And here's what happens next. Campuses get this. They see each campus and they see how their campus did compared to others. Then they craft goals, action steps to address that. Teachers get their own feedback from what the student said about them. Tomorrow we're coding the teacher responses. We haven't done that yet. Talking to you all, and then all of this goes into those campus improvement plan and the district improvement plan that we talked about in the beginning. And this is the way I end. Anytime I get the opportunity to talk about feedback from our community, my goodness, it's a gift. The fact that 5,000 people took the time to give thoughtful feedback, to wade through, I mean, there's quite a few questions, and gave thoughtful feedback, and then went on to write kind affirmations that do fill the bucket and warm the heart, as well as respectful comments about where do we go from here. Like, I personally read every single comment from parents, and in the past I've had to delete some because they were just inappropriate. I didn't have to delete anything. Like, people give us pointed comments, but nothing was you, humma. Like, there was none of that, and I'm so grateful for our community that they give us that level of feedback that is actionable and helps us continue to do great things with kids. Frank, it's your turn for
Well, we
thanking
thank
people on
you.
food.
Let's give her a round of applause. Thank you so much, Jimmy, and I hope you all know we really do use this. I mean, we spend lots of times in lots of meetings in Jimmy's area talking about this stuff, so it's really important to us. And you are really important to us. So I want to take the moment to thank everyone who has served their membership rotations, and so there's the list. We'll be in touch, obviously. We do emails, and then one thing, if you're a parent, we do part of our thing is to reach out to you to say, hey, who do you recommend for this group? You know what it's about, and let us know. You can certainly, you don't have to give them a heads up or anything. I just need their email, phone number if you have it, and then I'll do the introductions and that kind of thing. And I'll say something like, hey, I heard that you might, I'll explain what this is. I heard you might be a great fit. I don't even have to tell them who recommended it. But don't play any tricks on anybody, like really. So if you're rotating out, we'll give you an email. But can we clap for these people? Thank you so much. I appreciate you all. In football, we might call this the fourth quarter of the school year. And so we all know from watching sports that sometimes the fourth quarter is the longest one because there's timeouts, there's strategy, etc. And so for all the teachers in the room, we will hope you score lots of touchdowns for the last quarter. I'm going to give you a timeout in a couple of weeks. You'll have a Friday off for a timeout. But otherwise, we want to win the game. For you parents, likewise, I want to wish you lots of luck in this fourth quarter as we finish up with all the oak pollen, etc. And so community members as well, thank you so much. That ends our year for DEAC. Please grab a cookie on your way out if they're still in here. Thank you very much.
Take these.
Those are yours to keep.
If you want me to recycle it and use it at the next meeting, just leave it on the table.
Thank you all. Grab a cookie.